Hello and welcome to the Week 18 EdjSports NFL Betting Preview. I am your host, as always, Ian O'Connor, Senior Data Analyst here at EdjSports. And it's hard to believe we're already at Week 18, the final week of the 2021 regular season, the first Week 18 in NFL history with the expanded regular season now. So today I'll be taking a look at some of the most meaningful games of the week where we do see some value, and then a couple Moneyline value picks as always. Before getting into those, just the usual reminders. You can catch me every Thursday throughout the season. I believe we'll still be here during the NFL playoffs previewing the upcoming weekend's action as well. And then every Monday morning, I'm joined by our VP of Data Science, Scott Brown. We'll recap the weekend's action and decision-making. We will still be doing that during the playoffs as well. And then we usually have a betting preview during the regular season, obviously, for Monday Night Football. During the playoffs, I think there's only 1 week. That first week, we've got a couple Monday Night Football games, so we may be here previewing those during that first week of the playoffs. You can catch all of our shows on the EdjSports Podcast Network. That is available on your podcast platform of choice. Be sure to subscribe, give us a 5-star review, and also subscribe to our EdjSports YouTube channel. You'll be able to catch all of our podcasts, our matchup previews for every game that we have, as well as our head coach rankings that we do with our Champion Gaming brand ambassador, Katie George. We will still have those running through the playoffs. We have determined our final rankings. Those will be released on Wednesday. I believe it's February 9th, just before the Super Bowl. We'll crown our Coach of the Year and give out a handful of other awards. But throughout the playoffs, we will still be ranking the playoff coaches based on where they finished in our overall coach ranking. So keep an eye out for that every Wednesday, continuing throughout the playoffs. And then if you haven't already, be sure to check out our site at edjsports.com. That's EdjSports.com. And then download our app, which is available for both iOS and Android. And both of those places, you can get pregame betting insights for every NFL game, not just the games that I talk about here. You will also be able to see our fair value spreads and totals. So those are our projected spreads, our projected totals, where we think those lines and totals should be versus where they are in the market. You'll hear me reference those throughout the show here today. You also have the ability to track your bets to see the probability of them hitting. So you can put in who you bet on, what the odds were, how much you bet, and those odds for those bets will update in real time throughout the games. So getting into this week, again, last week of the regular season, this is always a tough one. We've got the likelihood of some starters sitting or playing only a few series or a half, as it appears we may see for Green Bay, as those players seem likely to get out there and play a little bit based on the words of Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers. We've also got some teams that are maybe locked into a playoff seed or need some help to move up, but the bye is not available for them. So it's really hard to know if those teams will be trying their hardest. You always expect and would hope a team is trying, but in situations like this, sometimes the risk is greater than the reward when it comes to Week 18 when you've already got a playoff spot locked up. But we do our best. I'll review a few of the bigger games where we know both teams should have something on the line coming into game time, starting with Tennessee at Houston. This is a big one we've been talking about all week, really, and a handful of AFC teams have their eyes on this game because a Tennessee loss would open the door for either Kansas City, Buffalo, or New England to grab the 1 seed based on how those games fall. Tennessee, though, just needs to win to hold on to the AFC's number 1 seed. They will be the lowest rated number 1 seed in DVOA history if they fall into that. Their record is much better, obviously, than their on-field play, having locked up that 1 seed but being very low in DVOA. They've suffered through a ton of injuries. So it's really been a struggle for them this year. They've done a great job to make it to this point. But this Tennessee team lost to this Houston team at home in Nashville back in Week 11. Houston also just beat the Chargers a couple weeks ago. So a Houston team that's not going to go down without a fight. Now, the Titans are only 19th in overall DVOA. They're below average in total DVOA at minus 2.4%. The baseline or league average is 0.0%, so they're below average there. Only 22nd in offense. Surprisingly, they're 9th in defense after finishing, I think, 28th last year, and a lot of people expecting them to be potentially worse than last season. So been a top 10 defense throughout the season. Now, Houston, though, much worse in the rankings. 28th in overall DVOA. I mentioned Tennessee was 19th at minus 2.4. Houston is minus 24.6% DVOA. Again, good for 28th. Overall, only 4 teams, worse than them there. 31st in offense, 18th in defense, so not horrible, but still really nothing to really like about the Houston team at an overall perspective against Tennessee. But maybe that's not necessarily the right way to say it, because we kind of like Houston in this one, but finishing up Tennessee around the middle of the league in rushing, despite missing Derrick Henry, where they can really attack this Houston team, only 24th stopping the run. So Tennessee could lean on the run once again. Derrick Henry is back at practice. Don't think he's expected to play this week. If they get the bye, he might be back for that first game in the divisional round, but still Houston really struggling to stop the run this year. So it could be a big game for Deonta Foreman, Dontrell Hilliard, and those guys in the backfield. Now, I mentioned we like Houston. I said there's not really a lot to like about them, but the model really likes them. The market sits at Tennessee -10. Our edge fair value is at Tennessee -3. So we think this should be closer to a field goal line in favor of Tennessee, giving Houston 71% chance to cover and 73.6% chance to push or cover +10. So that's almost 3 out of 4 simulations. Now, Tennessee is 3-1 against the spread in their last 4, but they lost 3 straight prior to that, only 10-6 on the season against the spread. Pretty good. Houston 2-1 against the spread in the last 3, but they also lost 3 straight prior to that. Only 7-9 against the spread on the season. So there's just some numbers kind of maybe to keep in mind that you can use and glean some information from. Looking at the total, the market sits at 43 points. A lot of low totals again this week. We've got one at 37.5, one at 38.5, a couple 40s, some 41s, 42s, 43s. The highest of the week is only 49.5, which we'll get to later. This one at 43 points. Our edge fair value pretty close at 42. So there's a 50.7% chance that this game falls short of 43 points. So very close here, but the edge is on the under. So looking at this, there's about a 6% edge for the under to hit versus the over, not including hitting right on that 43 points, but 50.7% chance for it to stay under 43 with no push. Now, Tennessee the under has hit in 4 straight. The under is 9-7 this season. The Houston under hit last week after 3 straight over. So both teams were under last week. Tennessee's under in 4 straight. Both teams 9-7 unders this season have won more. So the under has won 9 times this season, or has hit 9 times this season in both Tennessee's and Houston's games. The last time these teams played, it was a pretty low-scoring game. They combined for only 35 points. It was a 22-13 win I mentioned for Houston. So very low-scoring game last time. So we're expecting a little bit less than the market in this one, but still very, very close. Now, 91% of the bets and 51% of the money are on Houston. A little surprising that much of the money is on Houston, or maybe not the money, but the bets. I'm sorry. The money split 50-50, 10 points is a big spread, double digits. Tennessee, again, really just hasn't been as good as their record on field. Still a lot of injuries we mentioned. So seems a lot of the sharps, a lot of money, big money bets being put on Houston. But retail, number of bets, 91% on Houston. I would expect to see that maybe go a little bit more towards Tennessee before kickoff on Sunday. But it'll be interesting to see if that shifts and by how much come Sunday afternoon. So recapping this one, value on Houston to cover, little to no value on the total. Houston has 73.6% chance to push or cover +10. And there's only 50.7% chance to fall short of 43 points. Again, not counting the push, though, of them combining for exactly 43. There's about a 6% edge in favor of the under. Now, moving on to one of the biggest games of the week in San Francisco at the Los Angeles Rams. Now, this is our closest game of the week. There are playoff implications for San Francisco potentially, and I say potentially because San Francisco makes the playoffs with a win or a New Orleans loss. So either one. The interesting thing here is New Orleans plays before San Francisco at 1 o'clock. So San Francisco is going to know if they're already in before they even kick off or if they still need to win. So that seems a little odd the way the NFL likes to play it. It'd be tough to move this one to the 1 o'clock window due to it being a West Coast game or 1 o'clock Eastern time. And then New Orleans and Atlanta on the East Coast. Could have moved that to the afternoon so they could both play at the same time. Maybe that would put too many games in the late window. I don't know how they do the scheduling, but interesting there. But San Francisco could still know beforehand that they're in the playoffs. So that could factor into here if, they know they're in. Maybe they don't play their starters the whole game. So interesting to see there. Now, on the other hand, for the Rams, not necessarily, playoff implications. They're already in the playoffs, but the division is still on the line. They can win the division with a win or an Arizona loss. Now, they don't have the benefit that San Francisco has of knowing their fate, if you will, before kicking off because Arizona kicks off at the same time against Seattle. So they'll have to, I guess, maybe do a little bit of scoreboard watching while they're playing, but they're going to want to play for the win regardless. Now, a very good matchup overall between NFC West rivals. San Francisco kind of quietly a top 10 DVOA team. They're 7th overall, 5th in offense, and 8th in defense. The Rams, we know how good they can be. They've played some close games here lately. Last week against Baltimore, who was just a depleted defense, was really struggled to put points on the board, but came away with a win. They found a way to get it done. 5th overall in DVOA, the Rams are 6th in offense, 5th in defense. So both teams very, very good overall, across the board, really. So now the 49ers are 5th in both passing and rushing offense. Deebo Samuel 14th in receiving, by far number 1 in rushing among wide receivers. We know how much he can run the ball. Eli Mitchell 15th in rushing. The Rams are 8th in passing, 12th in rushing, and 2 really good offenses. A little bit better passing than rushing. Darrell Henderson Jr. has been hurt, but they will be getting Cam Akers back. So interesting to see how he looks, how much work he gets. They do still have Sony Michel, who's been pretty good lately. And then we know Cooper Kupp is the clear number 1 wide receiver in the NFL this year, and in DYAR, which is defensive yards above replacement, which is basically how many yards a player gains over a replacement level player, adjusted for defense. And Cooper Kupp, I think it's no surprise that he's number 1 there. So in the Rams, top 5, or number 8 passing, 12 rushing. San Francisco, 5th in most passing, rushing. Really good. The Rams are top 5 in both pass and rush defense. So really good matchup here between that San Francisco offense and that Los Angeles defense. San Francisco, on the other hand, defensively 2nd against the run, but only 18th against the pass. Even worse, only 30th against wide receiver 1. So could be another big game for Kupp. Even a quiet game for him is, 6, 7 catches for 70 yards, 80 yards, it seems like, which is a pretty good day at the office for most receivers. Odell Beckham Jr. getting more and more involved. It seems coming up with some big plays. Had the huge 4th down catch last week that set up the touchdown that he scored to give them the win. So overall, really evenly matched teams. Again, comes in as our closest of the week. So the market has this game as a 4.5 point spread in favor of the Rams. It's opened at 6.5, so they've been bet down a couple points across that touchdown threshold of 6 points. Our fair value, LA -1. We have a 52-48 win probability split, obviously in favor of the Rams, with them as 1-point favorites. So we give San Francisco 63.5% chance to cover, and quite a bit better chance to win than the market does. Now, looking at their season numbers, San Francisco 8-8 against the spread on the year, but they are 6-2 in their last 8. The Rams, on the other hand, also 8-8 on the year, but they're 4-1 in their last 5. They did lose 5 straight against the spread prior to that, but both teams have been very good against the spread lately. So something's got to give unless this gets to an integer here, a whole number where they can tie, or they can push, I should say, on the spread. But the way it's looking, one of these trends or one of these streaks is going to have to come to an end, and a team is going to have a loss against the spread here. Now, the market total is 44.5 points. Our edge fair value is 49. Not necessarily one of our high, or I guess one of our highest. Still a handful of games higher than this one. But we give this game 63.9% chance to exceed that 44.5 point total. Now, San Francisco, over is 8-7-1 on the year. The Rams alternated overs and unders in their last 7, but the over is 8-7-1 also after the over started 4-0. So overs here lately for San Francisco have been pretty good. Again, 3-0, or sorry, the under for San Francisco is 3-0 in their last 3, and the under is 8-7-1 on the year. So it'll be interesting to see. We like the over in this one. The under has been hot for San Francisco lately, and then the Rams again have alternated. So really no trend. Kind of glean from that their last so many games. Looking at the public betting, 70% of the bets and 93% of the money on San Francisco. I guess a lot of people are thinking this is going to be close as well. I imagine that money would come down a little bit towards the Rams, but perhaps it's not too surprising because, again, we think it should be very close at 4.5. It's already been bet, from 6.5 to 4.5. So there's obviously been a lot of money bet on San Francisco since it opened. It'll be interesting to see if it gets closer. We think it should, or at least the value, our projection thinks this game should be closer to 1 point. Will be interesting to see if that money keeps coming in on San Francisco and gets bet down closer to 1 or a pick 'em. I don't imagine it'll get that close before game time, but A lot of people on San Francisco, both the bets and the money, and just can't help but remember that 2019 game. Huge playoff implications on the line in the Seattle versus San Francisco game. San Francisco had the 1 seed on the line, just needed to win in Week 17 to get that 1 seed in the NFC. Came down to a fourth down for Seattle, just inches away from getting in the end zone and giving Green Bay the number 1 seed that year. I believe Seattle was already in the playoffs, but expecting this one to be pretty close, and not surprising for if this one comes down to a final play or even a final drive on Sunday. So recapping this one, value on San Francisco to cover, and we've got value on the over, 63.5% chance for the 49ers to cover, plus 4.5 where it is right now, and 63.9%, pretty close to that 63.5 to cover, 63.9% chance to exceed 44.5 points, and for that over to hit. Now, moving on to our last game, perhaps the biggest game of the week. At least Sunday Night Football is set up to be the biggest game of the week. It's the final game of Week 18, the last game of the regular season. Now, unless Indianapolis loses on Sunday, it's win or go home for both the Chargers and the Raiders. And I'm sure it's something you've already heard, as it's been a pretty big topic of discussion, has gained some steam as the week has gone on. But with an Indiana loss, a tie would get both the Chargers and the Raiders into the playoffs. So can't imagine we would see a kneel fest for 60 minutes for both of these teams to get into the playoffs. But, there's kind of a few ways to look at it. Not that, the Indy would have to lose again to Jacksonville, although they haven't beaten Jacksonville outside of Indianapolis since 2014. One of those losses came in London. But would expect them to beat Jacksonville. Jacksonville's also playing for the number 1 pick still. A win and a Detroit loss, I believe, would move Detroit into that 1 spot. So Jacksonville has some incentive to lose, but if they could keep the Colts, a division rival, out of the playoffs, they might do it. But as the Chargers and Raiders look at it, what's more important, you getting into the playoffs and not risking getting out, and playing a game to a tie so that you can both get in. Or letting one of your division rivals, get in the playoffs as well. So I would think these teams are going to play to win, even if Indianapolis loses. So don't really think there's much to it, but you never know. It would definitely make things more interesting if the Colts do find a way to lose that game in Jacksonville. But back to this one, the Chargers really have the advantage in DVOA. Should be a good game between division rivals, playoffs on the line. The Chargers won this one pretty big, I think, not too long ago. It was I believe also a Sunday Night Football game, if I remember correctly. Could be wrong on that. Might have been a Monday night game, but the Chargers came out on top, won this one 28-14. We're up pretty big early. Las Vegas kind of, if I remember correctly, made a little bit of a comeback a couple times. This was all the way back in Week 4. I didn't realize it was that long ago. So teams have come a long way since then. Still expecting a close game. Chargers 11th in DVOA. The Raiders only 21st. The Chargers have the 3rd best offense, but they're only 26th on defense. And we saw what Houston did to them just a couple weeks ago. And this Raiders team, only 19th on offense, 23rd on defense. So really haven't been great. It seems like when you watch them, sometimes they seem a little bit better than what the underlying numbers say. 17th in offense in the second half of the season. So really have been pretty consistent throughout the year as far as those underlying metrics go. But the Raiders, only 25th against the pass, and they're facing Justin Herbert and that Chargers offense. That's 3rd best pass offense in the league. So could be another big day. Could be a huge moment for Justin Herbert early in his career if he can get them a big win on Sunday night, get them into the playoffs. Could also be, I've seen this a few places, people saying this may be a career-defining game for Derek Carr, who's been in the league for a while. That year they got in the playoffs, I believe it was, had a broken leg. Broke bone, wasn't able to play, but Derek Carr is 8th in passing this season. So this one comes out as our second closest game of the week in Week 18. The spread in the market is Chargers -3. We're at Chargers -2, so just a little bit of value on Las Vegas. 51.6% chance to cover +3, so to lose by less than 3 or to win, and then 59.7% chance to push or cover +3. So expecting around a field goal game, but giving the Raiders the advantage when it comes to either losing by a field goal or just a bit less, or being able to come away with a win. Now the Chargers 8-8 against the spread on the year. Las Vegas 7-9, but they're 3-6 in their last 9, but have won 2 straight against the spread. So the last couple weeks have been pretty good for the Raiders, but their last 9, aside from those 2, they're 1-6 outside in those last 9, including those 2 they won the last couple weeks. So pretty, evenly split for both teams on the season. Neither one has been really dominant like the Packers or the Cowboys in really covering each week. But interesting to see how this one will turn out, especially with such a close spread. Looking at the total, this is where we get into some fun. Market has a total of 49.5 points. That's their highest of the week. I mentioned there weren't a lot of high spreads this week. 49.5 is the highest. Our edge fair value comes out at 59 points, by far the highest of the week. I think the next closest is 54 points. We've got this game with a 77% chance to exceed 49.5 points. So over 3/4 of our simulations result in over 49.5, basically 50 points or more. 65 points is our most common outcome, but it comes down a little bit lower for a 59-point fair value where we think there's equal opportunities on both sides. Now the Chargers have the over is hit in 5 straight games for them. Las Vegas is on the opposite side. The under is hit in 3 straight, but they alternated overs and unders in the prior 7, so it was kind of hit or miss there. But the last 3 for Vegas have gone under. The last 5 for the Chargers have gone over. I would expect this one to go over. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored here with those really underwhelming defenses. Neither has been great. Looking at the public betting, a lot of the money on the Chargers, a lot of the bets on the Chargers, 83% of bets, 76% of money. Not too surprising, I think, just with that Chargers offense, how good they can be and really have been in a lot of games this year. Expecting them to come out on top, and with it being a close spread, expecting them to come out more than a field goal. Personally, I think I would take the Chargers to cover it, to win and to cover this one on Sunday night. So recapping Sunday Night Football, value on Las Vegas from the model, strong value on the over. So the Raiders, 59.7% chance to push or cover +3, 77% chance for this game to exceed 49.5 points. And moving on to the final portion of the show, our money line values. Last week we had Cincinnati against the Chiefs. They ended up hitting in a thriller in Week 17, and then Miami fell to the Titans. Really wasn't that close. Went 1-1, not so bad. Had been on kind of a rough patch lately, so finally to get at 500 for last week wasn't bad. This week I'm going to go with 2 NFC West teams. The first is one of the games we talked about just not too long ago, San Francisco and Los Angeles Rams. Again, somewhat dependent on the New Orleans game. If New Orleans loses, San Francisco's already in the playoffs. Will they rest some starters at some point, or will they, go full go already kind of planning and playing to get into the playoffs coming into Sunday? So will be interesting to see there. The way it is now, though, San Francisco we have with a 48% chance to win versus a market implied 36%, so about a 12% difference there. So we like the 49ers almost at a 50-50. The market has them winning a little over 1 out of 3. Again, should be close. Both teams top 10 overall DVOA, so don't be surprised to see San Francisco sneak one out late to get into the playoffs if necessary, or if a win is necessary. And then second, going to go with Seattle versus Arizona. This could be Russell Wilson's final game as a Seahawk. They always want to win. Probably want to win one for Russell, just like we saw with Pittsburgh at home last week. Russell Wilson did get a win at home as well in his potentially last game at Lumen Field in Seattle. But we've got the Seahawks with 35% chance to win versus a market implied 29% against Arizona. So not as much of a difference, but still we give them, so still kind of a long shot, but we give them the win in 1 in 3 simulations. The market's they're only at just under 30%. Now, Seattle did lose to Arizona earlier, and that was Arizona's final game without Kyler Murray. But, Seattle may want to play spoiler for Arizona winning the division. They're coming off a big win, though it was against Detroit. But Rashad Penny has been great the last few weeks. DK Metcalf finally came alive last week, doomed me in my fantasy championship. So that was a little rough. But still, the Seahawks offense, against a bad team in Detroit, but still coming alive and finally seeing them do what we saw earlier in the season. And Arizona has really struggled the last half of the season. Only 19th in offense, 16th in defense after being top 10 in both early on in the season. So really kind of 2 years in a row, they've really struggled in the second half. Seattle's been better lately, 9th in offense since week 10. The defense still only 22nd, but that's up from 25th in the first half. So a little bit of improvement is always good to see. So again, that's San Francisco and Seattle as our moneyline value picks. So that will wrap up the Week 18 preview. A quick recap on those just for those of you keeping track at home. Tennessee at Houston. We give Houston 73.6% chance to push or cover +10. 50.7% chance for this game to fall short of 43 points. So just a very small edge. San Francisco at the Los Angeles Rams. 49ers, 63.5% chance to cover, plus 4.5. 63.9% chance for the game to exceed 44.5 points. That Sunday night football game between the Chargers and the Raiders. Las Vegas, 59.7% chance to push or cover, plus 3. And 77% chance for this game to exceed 49.5 points. Again, our week high 59-point total. I think that's one of our highest of the season, if not the highest. So expecting a lot of points in Las Vegas. And then those money line values we just went over. San Francisco, 48% chance to win versus the market implied 36%. And Seattle, 35% chance to win versus market implied 29%. So that will do it for the 2021 regular season finale betting preview. Be sure to check out all of these pregame betting insights and more for week 18 and beyond on EdjSports.com and our new EdjSports app. That's EdjSports. And come back on Monday to hear our weekend recap from all the week 18 action. It is expected to be an exciting one with a lot of playoff implications on the line. Please subscribe to the EdjSports Podcast Network on your preferred podcast platform. Give us a 5-star review as well. Help us grow our audience. And subscribe to the EdjSports YouTube channel as well, where you can see our matchup previews for every game, every week. And don't forget to check back on Wednesday for our next head coach rankings update heading into the playoffs. Thank you for listening and enjoy the Week 18 action.